Okay, so those are really kind of your choices for how to go about making your backups. Let's talk a little bit about the media, because you have a lot of things to consider there. So if your system has a hard disk built into it, you could just use that disk when you make your backups and write them back on the hard drive. Very low cost. It's going to eat up a lot of space though, because as you putting a lot of information on your disk and then you make a backup, that information's getting written there too. You can fill that up pretty much in a hurry. And it's also not going to protect you if that disk drive or that system fails catastrophically, because it's all sitting on the same media. So not really a very good option for something that you care about a lot, and probably not a direction that I would recommend going. Flash drives are coming into age, these little zip drives that you plug into your USB port. They're relatively inexpensive, they're really easy to transport. May not be realistic though if you have a lot of data. So just my files on my system, I'm approaching 200 gigabytes worth of data. So if I'm using 128 gigabyte flash drive, it's going to take a lot of those to back up 200 gigabytes worth of data. Now, the interesting thing I learned in researching this is that there is a 512 terabyte zip drive commercially available now, if you got $1,750 to spend, and they're working on a 1 terabyte drive. So, as you wait long enough, the technology improves, and the amount of storage you have available to you is just going to consider to go. So, a flash drive may be a viable alternative for you if you have relatively small amounts of files. If you're a hog like me, it isn't going to work real well. You could also use a CD or a DVD or a BlueRay drive. And again, if you have a relatively small amount of data, that'll work. But in addition to the 200 gigabytes of file I have another 110 gigabytes of images. So that's 310 gigabytes worth of stuff. If I was doing it on a CD, I'd have to have 442 disks. Now, DVD is a little higher density, so I'd only use 66 of them. Blu-ray, if I take that phone up to that 100 gigabyte honker, I could get done with 4 of those. The downside there is right now, these things are about $25 to $50 a piece. It just kind of depends on factors. So, the 100 gigabyte Blu-ray is nice, but it's not cheap either. So, plus there's also the hassle of, all of these things, you're going to have multiple pieces of media. So when the backup is running, when the first one's done, it's going to spit it out. You're going to put the next one in. This isn't really hands-off or automatic. So I think, all of us with the amount of files that we're accumulating, probably not going to find flash drives or CD, DVD, Blu-rays to really be a viable option for us. Although I'll just put it in a plug, you can buy something called an M-disk version of these things, which is it writes on a slightly different media, even more expensive than this. But the nice thing about these M-disks is they are very hard to destroy. The M stands for millennium. They really do think these things are going to last hundreds of years. So when we get to talking about archiving, you'll hear that I talk a bit more about M-disk, but archiving is different than backing up. I'll try to make that point again. So we're talking about backups, not archiving. Forget I said that. Okay, another technology that is really coming along, though, in terms of capability and low prices, these attached disk drives. So you can get them with the USB type of connection. You can get them with other types of networks for the Apple machines, and the price of the media is really dropping. I found the Seagate 5 terabyte drive with a USB 3 interface for $177. Now USB 3 is a newer, faster interface, and so if your computer supports the USB 3 interface, then it makes the amount of time it takes to transfer large files to these devices even lower. Now older computers won't support it, but newer computers are starting to come with that as standard. And they even have portable versions. We have a portable USB version we use to back up the DGS files. Barbara and I each have a copy of it with us, and then once a month we just swap them. And you don't even have to plug it in power. They just run right off the USB connector, and they're really handy, really nice. So they come in all kinds of flavors, all kinds of shapes. But the point is that the cost is really getting down there. The performance is really extraordinary. And so in my humble opinion, I think that this is probably one of the best solutions for your backups out there, is some kind of an external USB FireWire, whatever the latest thing in Apple is, because the costs have just come down so much that, and you can just store tremendous amounts of data. So this is another approach that I think that those of us that are really concerned about large amounts of files should consider real strongly in our backup strategy. Now, as I learned to my dismay when I got my my fancy new system a couple years ago and went to do my backups on my network attached server and found out that Windows wouldn't let me do it without buying a professional version of Windows. I had to get a little bit creative. Now I have a desktop PC, a big honking box thing, and so what I was able to do in that was actually mount a second physical disk drive inside of it, and Windows was quite happy with that. So, you know, if you're not talking about a laptop, if you're not talking about some of these little machines, if you've got these little big honking desktops, that is a backup option for you. You don't have to use it just for backups. You can use it for a lot of other things too. And, you know, but it is a good place to store your backups. And the thing I like about this approach too is, you know, I initially bought a 2 terabyte drive, and as I started filling that thing up, technology had marched on. The 3 terabyte drives price dropped about $100, so I got a sale at Fry's, and I just took the 2 terabyte out, put in the 3 terabyte, and started making my backups all over again. And so, you know, again, for that class of a system, if it has the ability to put another drive in there, this is another alternative that you can consider as well. But this solution isn't much help if it's the only thing I have and my system catches on fire or gets stolen or something really bad happens to the house. So, you know, if you're not getting the point now that you need to have multiple copies in multiple places, I hope I'm reinforcing that with you. Another device you can consider is something called a network attached server. Now this is a kind of a step up in technology, but not so much as you might think. Now this is a standalone device, connects to your network, to an IP type network, and all of the systems that are also attached to the network have the ability to access it, write to it, and read files from it if you want to share. And they come in many different varieties. You can buy, you know, little standalone enclosed things, or you can buy much bigger versions where you can have multiple disk drives. And you can do it, there's a technology where you can spread the files out over several drives. So if one of your drives fails, all you have to do is take it out, replace it with a new one, and the system will automatically, you know, recover the redundant information, and you're back up and running again. And so this is how a lot of commercial services can have real high reliability, availability of the data, because the data is actually replicated across several physical drives. No single point of failure is going to wipe out your data. And this technology is becoming affordable and doable in the home. And so you can buy some very powerful systems like this, more than $177. You're talking probably, you know, $400 or $500 for the chassis and about $100 for each of the disks you put in there. But again, if you really care about your data and you're really concerned about making sure that nothing bad happens to it, this might be a good solution for you. As I said, you can use it with multiple PCs. It offers multimedia support, so if you're into videos and things like that, you can tie this into that system. You can even set it up so you can remotely access it. So you can kind of have your own little piece of the cloud, you know, sitting in your closet, you know, if you choose to. So many choices to consider and many types of devices to choose from. But the concept is really pretty simple, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about how you might go about implementing this in your home. This is a real affordable one, this Western Digital one. Dick Eastman had talked about, so I just found it, as he did, for $214 on Amazon.com. And it looks like a really nice little system. And he writes a lot about it in this article he wrote. I added 4 terabytes to my personal cloud. I have a link to that at the end of the presentation, so you can kind of read about his experiences too. But it's a relatively small system and relatively affordable. Now, it only has the one media. It doesn't have the multiple drives and some of the other bells and whistles, but it has quite a few features and looks like a nice little unit. Now, you may be thinking, well, it sounds complicated. How do I hook it up? Well, it's not that difficult. You know, most of us have systems or have, you know, internet service providers in our home, and it works something like this. You know, you have the connection coming in from the service provider that's connecting you to the internet, and you have some kind of a device sitting in your house. And then you connect your PC to it. You can connect other stuff, but, you know, this is about the simplest home network. So, you know, you go to Comcast or AT&T or whoever, have them install the internet presence in your house, and you cable your PC up to it, and you're hooked up to the internet. Many of these come with a wireless interface as well, and so built into the device, this is how you have your wireless access. So if you have, you know, laptops that only have the wireless interface on them, or if you have your iDevices and you want to be able to access the internet, this is your little Wi-Fi component for home. And again, that's usually integrated in the device. Here's a typical one. This is the one AT&T uses from 2Wire. That's the front of it. On the back of it, you'll see that we've got, you can't see real well because it's a fuzzy picture, but there are 4 connectors on this device, so you can hook up to 4 things up there without having to do some additional stuff. And this just sits in a closet somewhere, and like I said, it can be just as simple as hooking up one PC to it. If that's all you have, then that's all you need to do. But you can connect other PCs up. There's 4 connectors. You could even go right up there, set your NAS down next to it, and plug into that connector. And that's all there would be to doing it, or to installing a NAS in your home network. It's just physically plugging in the back of that, and then you'll have some software that you would install in your PCs, and it would access it across your network, and you'd be up and running. If you want to get just a little bit more sophisticated, if you don't want to be running all your wires to this device sitting in a closet, you can extend that out using just a simple Ethernet hub. So if right now you just have one cable going to your hub to your PC, you could buy an Ethernet hub and add additional PCs without having to go back to wherever this device is sitting. You may still choose to leave the NAS server hooked up if you've got the ports in the room there, or move, if you want to, put it down on the same hub as well. So, Ethernet is really not that complicated. It really just is standard cables and kind of standard devices. So, setting up a NAS in your own house really isn't all as complicated as you might think about it if you never really saw how simple it was. I mentioned Ethernet hubs. They come in a variety of shapes, prices, and capabilities. So here's a little, kind of a classic Netgear 4-port one. There's some bigger 8-port ones, smaller ones. You can buy these things for as low as $10, $15 on sale. This is what my setup at home looks like. This is my device that AT&T provided. You can see that I brought my cables out to a hub that I've got mounted on the wall here. And then that's one of the NASs I have. It's an iOmega device. And that all just sits in a closet behind a closed door, and I don't really pay much attention to it. And then these cables run out and go to my office, to my PC, and all the other devices I have too. So, this isn't high tech. It doesn't have to be really hard. And I want to make the point that if you decide that a network access server is really something you want to do, it isn't that hard to do. And if you ever do have questions, I'd be happy to work with anybody here and help you do it. And just label them. That's my hub, that's my Ethernet hub, and that's my little NAS. Now, we all hear about storage on the cloud all the time. So, certainly storing your files out on the cloud is an alternative. And there's a variety of ways that you can do that. Now, there's things like, hopefully, or probably sound familiar to you. Dropbox, Google Drive, and Microsoft OneDrive are probably 3 of the most popular ones. And these all start out with some kind of a free component, and then there's a variety of ways you can add more storage if you need it. Sometimes you can pay more and have more storage space. In the case of Dropbox, if you recommend Dropbox to somebody and they sign up for it, you get some additional storage. So if any of you are thinking about getting Dropbox, I want to talk, because I set up a Dropbox account for the DGS, and I'd like to get some more free space out there. So if you don't have it and you're thinking about getting it, I'll send you the request on behalf of the DGS. When you add it, the DGS get a little more storage space there. They're really good choices for the file sharing we were talking about before. They're great for temporary storage. When I'm working on a presentation like this, I'm constantly making copies of the presentation up on Dropbox as well. So if I have a really stupid moment and do something on the version I'm working with at home, I know that I've always got a copy up there on Dropbox. It can be an acceptable choice for your backup strategy as well, as long as it's not the only choice. While the reliability of these things is pretty good, I just inherently distrustful that it's always going to be there. So again, as long as you have multiple copies in multiple locations, this is an acceptable strategy, but I wouldn't let it be your only one. But if you need a bigger cloud, there are some other choices that you can choose from as well. There's a service called MediaFire Pro, and you get 50 gig up there for free. And then if you want to pay a little bit more, $25 a year, you can have up to 1 terabyte worth of storage. And so Dick Eastman and several people have written about that, and so I would refer you to that article. But it's just an example of one of the kinds of services that are out there that you could consider if you need really, really big storage. Amazon Cloud Drive is also another alternative. With them, you get 5 gig for free, and then you can start adding more space for a pretty reasonable amount of money every year. And so there's a couple of references. Again, this is another Dick Eastman article, or if you go right to the Amazon.com Cloud Drive Learn More webpage, they'll tell you all about it. But for a small amount of money, you can have access to a lot of storage out there. So if you have a lot of photographs or some really huge amounts of files, this is a pretty low-cost alternative that might work for you. What about your iDevices, though? Got a lot of pictures on my iPhone, a lot of stuff on my iPad, a lot of music. And so Apple does automatically offer something called an iCloud, and they are automatically, whether you know it or not, backing up your iDevices on your behalf. So if you have an iPhone or an iPad, Apple, if you have it set up, is making backups in the iCloud for you. And they will store up to 5 gigabytes worth of stuff. And this is really great if your phone ever craters, or if you ever replace your phone or something. If you do this, I don't know if you've ever done it before, but you just go into the store, get your new phone. They say, oh, you're on the cloud, great. In about 5 minutes, they'll hand you your phone. All your apps are loaded. Everything but my music and my video, my music and my pictures are backed up in the iCloud. And that's a pretty nice thing. And again, it's free. But if you're like my sister-in-law, who never downloads a picture off her camera to save her life, and she did opt to set it up to back up her pictures on her iCloud, and then she started getting messages saying, well, you're out of storage space, you need to buy more, so she fell for it. So she's paying a lot of money to Apple to store her pictures for her when she does have some other alternatives. If you're managing your pictures like on your PC, if you're downloading them off your phone, then your backup strategy on your PC will also take care of your pictures. If you're using iTunes to manage your music, as I am again, that's all on my PC. So the backups that I'm doing on my PC are working for me for my music and for the pictures that I remember to download off of my phone. So, the iCloud backup is good for the apps, but not necessarily for the other stuff. But there are a couple of alternatives to the iCloud that I found really interesting. And this one is something called iDrive. How many of you, are any of you using iDrive? Okay. It's a cloud-based service again. You sign up and you get 5 gig of storage for free, and it works. All the iDevices, so my iPad and my iPhone, all of my pictures, any of the videos that I've taken, my calendar, my contacts, they're all backed up into iDrive for me. I can access them from any of my other iDevices. I can even access them from my Windows system or from a browser. And so, that's a pretty good way to get your pictures, particularly if you're taking a lot of pictures for free. Here's a really cool thing, though. For that's 99 cents a year, not $99, but for 99 cents a year, you can get up to 50 gigabytes of storage on iDrive. And so it's just amazing to me. I don't know how companies are really making money selling things for 99 cents a year, but as long as they are, I'm going to take advantage of them. And so this was just something I tripped across when I was researching this. So, again, particularly if you're into photos and you're taking a lot of pictures with your iDevices, or a lot of, the videos that you take on your camera, this is a great way to get those things, someplace. You can even set it up so it automatically uploads the pictures for you when you take them. So there's just completely hands-off. Now, some of these NAS devices, these network-attached servers, also have some pretty attractive features for interfacing with your iDevices. And one in particular that I was reading about, this Synology Disk Station DS413J, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? But it's a particular device. It's one of these larger ones that allows you to have multiple disk drives installed, but it also has some software that comes with it that apparently makes it really easy to integrate your iDevices and back them up as well. So it's kind of one-stop shopping, because it will do, again, your multimedia. If you're into Netflix or some of these other things where you're downloading videos, it'll handle that. It'll back up all the PCs you have, Windows, Macintosh, it doesn't care. And it can also be set up to do some automatic backups of all the stuff off your iDevices as well. So if you really want to kick this NAS stuff up, to the top notch, something like this would be a pretty attractive alternative, particularly if you just, a geek like I am. I'm thinking real seriously about this. So if the stock market does good, one of these is mine. Now, what about security, though? All this cloud stuff, as Susan pointed out this morning, there's just been some pretty high-profile hacking cases where some people have had some of their pictures. I think it was on Apple. I read a little bit more about that. Somebody hacked into it and stole some pictures. So some things that you can do to give yourself a little bit of security in this cloud environment involve just some pretty straightforward stuff if you stop and think about how these hackers are getting in. So first of all, don't use passwords like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or password. That's a real popular one. So, use some passwords that have a bit of complexity to them. Don't use the same password on multiple sites. Have a unique password for everything that you go to, because one of the ways that these people are hacking in is that they go in and they get this password files, which they shouldn't be able to do, but sometimes they do. Now they've got a bunch of passwords. They just say, okay, I'm going to try that one over here. If you're using it on Facebook, maybe you're using the same thing on Twitter, maybe using the same thing on Pinterest. And if you don't ever use a different password, that's one way that these hackers are getting into some of these other services. So, it is advised that you use unique passwords in everything that you have. Now, I've resisted this for a long time, but I'm changing. So what I'm doing is I have some kind of a base password, and then I put a little something on the beginning or the end of it to make it unique for each site. So at least if somebody gets one, it's not necessarily going to work with the other one. So some kind of a system, short of writing it down, I guess, would be good. But even if you have to resort to writing it down, just keep that in a safe place. It's not a bad idea to occasionally change your passwords. With my approach, that root part of the password that I use that is the same everywhere, I change that about once a year now. So at least I'm not leaving the same password sitting out there all of the time. And remember those questions they ask you if you forget your password, we'll ask you some challenge things so we can mail it to you. How hard would it be for you to figure out somebody's mother's maiden name? Easy. Yeah, absolutely. How many types of cars are there? So this is apparently, I was reading about this recent case with these pictures. They believe this is how somebody hacked in there. They didn't attract the password, they got around it this way. And so one of the tricks that you can do is, use the questions, you have to, but don't give obvious answers. So instead of putting your mother's maiden name there, maybe put like where she was born or some other thing that you can remember, because you do of course have to remember these things. Instead of a car like Chevy or Ford or something like that, I like the car in Back to the Future, so maybe I'll use something like that. So give kind of non-obvious answers to obvious questions, and that will at least make it harder for some of these hackers to try to guess. They're going to bust through on somebody that's using maiden names, really, before they're going to bust through on yours. So just some little tricks that the experts say that you might be able to use to help keep somebody from hacking in. For these cloud services that offer the ability to have a unique encryption key, use it. By all means, remember it, because if you lose it, those files are as gone as if you didn't have any backups at all. So just use that with a lot of caution. But really, I think the best advice is just don't become famous. I don't think anybody's going to be hacking into my pictures and looking for nude pictures of me. If they find them, they're welcome to them, and they deserve it.